The wind in the west, when it passes an empty house, carries a song of profound desolation, a mournful echo that speaks of lives once lived, now gone silent. For years, that desolate melody had been the soundtrack to Carter Hale's existence. The vast, unforgiving landscape of his farm, once a testament to shared labor and a burgeoning future, had become a desolate monument to his grief. The vibrant spirit that had once animated him had been systematically stripped away, leaving behind a shell of a man, adrift in a sea of memories. The loss of his wife had been a brutal blow, a fissure that cracked the foundation of his world. But the fever that had claimed his young son Jonah had been the final devastating tremor, reducing his life to an endless, solitary trek across a barren, internal desert. His voice, once a source of comfort and connection, now seemed to only find its way back to him, a hollow echo in the cavernous silence of his days. The farm was a place of duty, the rhythm of his life, a monotonous cycle of chores, and the nights a vast, starless expanse he navigated without compass or hope. He was a man defined by absence, by the phantom weight of hands that were no longer there to hold, by the silence where laughter used to bloom. He existed, but he did not truly live. Trapped in a perpetual twilight of sorrow, the world outside his grief a distant, muted hum. Then, one ordinary morning, the stillness was broken not by the familiar creak of the windmill or the distant lowing of cattle, but by the soft, tentative patter of small footsteps. They were not the heavy, purposeful strides of a man, nor the quick, familiar steps of his late wife. These were the hesitant, almost apologetic movements of children, their presence an anomaly in the quiet sanctuary of his barn. Carter, stirred from his accustomed stupor by this unexpected intrusion, found himself pulled from the depths of his own desolation. The sound was alien, yet it carried a faint, almost forgotten resonance, a whisper of a life he believed had been irrevocably extinguished. It was a sound that promised not just disruption, but a potential reawakening, a possibility that the arid landscape of his soul might, against all odds, begin to yield to a new season. This was the moment the desert within him stirred, not with the promise of an oasis, but with the unsettling awareness that life, in its relentless, often brutal fashion, was about to demand something more from him, to take away the only solace he had left, his solitude. The early morning air was thick with the promise of a storm, the sky a bruised, heavy grey. Rain began to fall, not gently, but with a violent, percussive force, hammering against the tin roof of the barn as if desperate to break through. It was a sound that triggered an old, ingrained response in Carter. His hand instinctively reached for the shotgun mounted by the door, a relic of a time when vigilance was a necessity, not just a habit. Yet as he pulled open the heavy barn door, the sight that greeted him was not one of threat, but of profound vulnerability. 6 small figures huddled together, their bodies pressed close as if to merge into a single, trembling entity. They were soaked to the bone, their clothes clinging to them, their faces etched with a fear that seemed far too deep for their years. The oldest among them, a boy with eyes that held a startling, ancient wisdom, could not have been more than 12. The youngest, a mere toddler, clutched at the oldest leg, a tiny island of terror in the midst of the downpour. There were no cries, no pleas, only the silent, desperate language of wide, dark eyes, brimming with an unspoken hunger and a profound, soul-deep need. Carter's immediate, almost automatic reaction was to alert the authorities, to pass this burden on to someone else, someone more equipped to handle such a crisis. But then a more primal, deeply human instinct surged within him. He looked at the smallest child, shivering uncontrollably, and without a second thought, he shed his own worn coat, the rough wool a stark contrast to the delicate fragility of the child's skin, and gently draped it around the little one. It was a gesture born not of calculated kindness, but of an unbidden, almost forgotten compassion, a flicker of warmth in the encroaching cold. As Carter stood there, the rain continuing its relentless assault, the oldest child, a boy named Owen, stepped forward, his movements hesitant but determined. He held out a small, mud-smeared piece of paper, his small hand trembling as he offered it. On it, written in a childish script that had been smudged and distorted by the rain, was a plea. "Please don't give it back to us." The words, simple yet devastating, struck a chord deep within Carter's fractured memory. A name flashed across the landscape of his mind: Jonah Hale. His younger brother, the one who had vanished a decade prior, swallowed by the promise of a new life with a westward caravan, leaving behind only a void. Could these children be his, descendants of his own blood, a living echo of a family he had long since mourned? Or were they simply lost souls, children bearing the weight of a name that still held a tender ache in his heart? A name that represented a connection he desperately craved, but could no longer grasp. The ambiguity of their presence, the mystery of their arrival, hung in the air, as heavy and charged as the storm brewing overhead. The town, a small collection of weathered buildings clinging to the edge of the vast prairie, reacted with a mixture of bewilderment and outright disbelief when Carter, the man who had retreated into himself following his profound losses, was suddenly seen with 6 bewildered children in tow. Whispers turned into outright pronouncements, laced with a patronizing concern that bordered on mockery. "Carter's lost his mind," they muttered, their words carrying on the wind. "Now he thinks he's the father of wild orphans." Advice, unsolicited and often contradictory, poured in. Orders were issued and veiled threats were made. The sheer audacity of it all. Carter, the man who had failed to protect his own son from the swift, cruel hand of fever, now burdened with the care of 6 unknown children. The weight of their judgment, the sheer improbability of his new role, pressed down on him, a familiar, crushing sensation. Yet amidst this suffocating pressure, a tiny, almost imperceptible spark ignited within him, a sensation he hadn't felt in years. It was the faint ember of purpose, a nascent feeling that perhaps, just perhaps, his life was not entirely over. The immediate practical challenges of sheltering and feeding 6 children in the harsh, unforgiving environment of the West began to loom large. Winter was fast approaching, and the meager stores on Carter's farm were barely sufficient for himself, let alone such a large, unexpected family. Beyond the physical necessities, however, lay a more profound obstacle: the children's own deep-seated mistrust. They were wary, their small faces constantly watchful, their silence a barrier as formidable as any physical wall. They refused to call him by any name, neither sir nor mister, simply existing in his presence, their eyes holding a quiet expectation of imminent rejection. Carter, in turn, felt a mirroring strangeness, a sense of being an alien in his own home, observed by these small, silent judges. Yet night after night, as the wind howled outside, a different kind of ritual began to unfold within the farmhouse. They shared the meager warmth of the fire, the simple sustenance of bread, and the unspoken currency of shared stories. Slowly, tentatively, in the quiet spaces between the silences, something began to take root. A fragile seedling of connection, pushing through the hardened soil of isolation. Then came the second, more insidious twist, a revelation that unraveled the threads of the fragile hope Carter had begun to weave. Owen, the eldest, his voice barely a whisper in the dim light of the barn, confessed the truth. They were not blood relatives, not bound by shared parentage in the way Carter had imagined. They were children united by a deeper, more profound bond. They were brothers by heart, a chosen family who had sworn an unbreakable oath never to be separated. The name Jonah Hale, the name that had sparked a flicker of familial hope, was merely an alias, a protective shield used by their adoptive father to safeguard them from a world that threatened to tear them apart. Their flight from the convoy of settlers, Owen explained, was a desperate act of defiance against a system that sought to divide them, to parcel them out to strangers in different towns. The letter, the plea scrawled on the mud-smeared paper, was not a cry of blood relation, but a desperate, heartfelt request for a home, for a place where their unconventional family could simply exist, together and unbroken. The second significant event arrived not with a whisper, but with a terrifying roar of familiarity that threatened to shatter Carter's nascent healing. The youngest child, Caleb, fell ill. The fever descended upon him with brutal swiftness, and with it the suffocating grip of the past returned with agonizing force. Every pained cry, every labored breath was a painful, visceral echo of the night he had lost his own son. The same cold dread washed over him, the same paralyzing fear threatened to engulf him, but this time something was different. The ingrained instinct to retreat, to flee into the numbing silence, did not take hold. He stayed. For 3 days and 3 nights he remained by Caleb's side, his rough hands gently wetting the child's burning forehead. His voice, rough and unused, crooning a lullaby he hadn't realized he still knew. As the fever finally broke and a fragile peace settled over the child, Carter felt a profound shift within himself. A part of him, the part that had been shattered by his past grief, seemed to have fractured further, only to begin the slow, arduous process of rebuilding itself, stronger and more resilient for the ordeal. The third, and perhaps most monumental turning point arrived in the form of a formal letter, delivered by the postman with an air of official gravity. It was from the court. Someone, a nameless informant, had reported the presence of 6 undocumented orphans on his farm. The stark, impersonal words spoke of regulations, of legal procedures, and of the inevitable consequence. The law was coming to reclaim the children, to forcibly remove them from the only semblance of stability they had found. The fragile ecosystem of their shared existence was now under direct threat, the precarious peace they had built poised to shatter. The weight of this external judgment, the impersonal machinery of the law, poised to dismantle their newfound family, fell upon Carter with a force that was both terrifying and galvanizing. It was a challenge that transcended the personal, a crisis that demanded a response that extended beyond his own quiet suffering. The abstract concept of family, so recently rediscovered, was now being directly challenged by the very systems designed to protect, forcing Carter to confront a choice that would define not only his future, but the future of these 6 children who had inadvertently become his own. The arrival of the court summons ignited a fierce protective instinct within Carter, a primal urge to shield these vulnerable souls from the cold hand of bureaucracy. He understood the letter represented not just a legal challenge, but a profound existential threat to the fragile sanctuary he and the children had painstakingly created. This impending confrontation demanded more than passive resistance. It required an active reimagining of his role, a decisive step beyond mere custodial care. He began to meticulously document their days, not as a defense against accusations, but as a testament to their shared life. He recorded the small victories, the way Caleb's laughter now echoed freely, the way Sarah, the quietest of the girls, had started drawing pictures of the farm, her art blooming with vibrant colors previously unseen. He meticulously noted how Owen, despite the looming legal shadows, had taken it upon himself to mend a broken fence, demonstrating a nascent sense of responsibility that mirrored Carter's own burgeoning sense of fatherhood. This act of systematic preservation was his way of asserting their reality, of proving that their existence together was not a matter of illegal adoption, but of genuine, lived experience. Furthermore, the need to confront the legal system directly necessitated an appeal to the very community that had once viewed him with suspicion. He couldn't face this challenge alone. The town's initial skepticism, fueled by years of his self-imposed isolation, had to be overcome. He decided to seek out individuals who, despite their past judgment, still held a core of decency and a respect for fairness. He approached the blacksmith, a gruff but fair man named Silas, who had known Carter's father. He spoke to Martha, the widowed schoolteacher, whose own quiet strength was respected throughout the settlement. He didn't beg or plead. Instead, he presented the facts of their shared life, the tangible evidence of their bond. He spoke of the children's resilience, their burgeoning hope, and the undeniable truth that they had found a home, a family, under his roof. He laid bare his own transformation, the way these children had reawakened a dormant humanity within him, a humanity he was now willing to fight for. Conversely, the children themselves began to exhibit a subtle but significant shift in their demeanor, moving from passive observers to active participants in their own narrative. They started to anticipate Carter's needs, offering help with chores without being asked, a silent acknowledgement of their shared purpose. Little Lily, the youngest, no longer clung solely to Owen. She would often toddle over to Carter, her small hand reaching for his, a gesture of unprompted affection that spoke volumes. Owen, recognizing the gravity of their situation, began to proactively engage with Carter, asking practical questions about the farm's operations, his youthful curiosity now tinged with a serious concern for their collective future. This burgeoning sense of ownership, this quiet assumption of belonging, was a powerful counter-narrative to the legal pronouncements that threatened to tear them apart. It was a testament to the organic growth of their family unit, a bond forged not by legal decree, but by shared experience and mutual affection. Another crucial layer to this unfolding drama was Carter's realization that he needed to actively advocate for the children's right to remain together, a principle that transcended the mere legalities of his situation. He understood that if these children were separated, the hope that had begun to bloom within them and within him would likely wither and die. He began to research adoption laws, not to find loopholes, but to understand the spirit of the legislation which, at its core, aimed to provide stable, loving homes for children. He saw his farm, despite its ruggedness, as precisely that, a haven of stability and love. He envisioned a future where their lives were not defined by legal battles, but by the simple rhythms of farm life, by shared meals, by the comfort of knowing they belonged together. This was the approach to the inmost cave of his legal and emotional challenge, preparing for the confrontation, gathering his evidence, and steeling himself for the fight to preserve the family he had unexpectedly found. The ordeal was not merely a legal battle, it was a profound crucible for Carter's character, a test of his newfound commitment. Faced with the court's stringent requirements and the looming threat of separation, he had to excavate reserves of resilience he never knew he possessed. This meant confronting his own deep-seated anxieties about his capacity to parent, anxieties born from the ultimate failure of protecting his biological son. He recalled the paralyzing fear that had gripped him then, the overwhelming sense of inadequacy that had driven him into his shell. Now, however, that fear was tempered by a fierce protectiveness for these 6 children who had, against all odds, breathed life back into his barren existence. He channeled this energy not into despair, but into meticulous preparation. He meticulously organized the children's sparse belongings, creating a clear, accessible system for their clothing and personal items, a physical manifestation of the order he was striving to bring to their lives. He also spent hours practicing his responses to potential legal questions, not just reciting facts, but articulating the emotional core of their situation. He had to convey the depth of their interconnectedness, the genuine affection that had blossomed between them, a truth that transcended the cold, impersonal language of legal statutes. This internal preparation was as vital as any external action, a wrestling with his own ghosts to emerge as the father these children needed. Moreover, the reward wasn't a tangible asset or a legal victory achieved easily. It was the quiet, unspoken affirmation from the children themselves, a growing trust that manifested in subtle ways. Consider how, during one tense evening when a judge's representative was scheduled to visit, little Lily, who had previously flinched at any unexpected touch, spontaneously reached out and placed her small hand on Carter's arm as they waited. This simple, unprompted gesture was more potent than any legal document, a silent declaration of her reliance on him, her belief in his protection. Similarly, Owen, observing Carter meticulously reviewing the children's birth certificates and adoption papers, offered a rare, genuine smile and stated, "We're all here, Carter. We're together." This acknowledgement, this quiet recognition of their shared destiny, was the true seizing of the sword. The moment Carter understood that his efforts had yielded something far more valuable than mere legal compliance, the unwavering faith of his adopted children. This internal validation, this confirmation of his parental role in their eyes, was the true prize, a testament to the emotional victory he was achieving. The process of preparing for the legal scrutiny forced Carter to confront the stark reality of his farm's limitations. It wasn't a grand estate. It was a working ranch, weathered and functional, but not luxurious. He had to acknowledge this, to present it not as a failing, but as a testament to resilience and resourcefulness. He meticulously repaired a section of the barn roof that had been leaking, a task he had previously put off. He ensured the small vegetable garden was well tended, even as the weather grew colder, demonstrating his commitment to providing for the children. He also had to confront the fact that their presence would inevitably draw more attention, more scrutiny from the outside world. This meant a conscious effort to present a united front, to ensure that the children, particularly Owen, understood the importance of their cooperation, not as an act of obedience, but as a shared endeavor to protect their family. He explained to Owen that their unified presentation was crucial, that their collective demonstration of stability and affection would speak more powerfully than any individual testimony. This was about projecting a cohesive unit, a family that, despite its unconventional origins, was undeniably strong and united. This proactive approach, this willingness to address the practical and emotional challenges head-on, was the essence of Carter's ordeal, a transformative journey that was reshaping him with every deliberate action. The aftermath of the ordeal was not a return to the quiet solitude Carter had once known, but a new equilibrium, forged in the fires of shared adversity. The legal proceedings, while ultimately resolved in their favor, had left an indelible mark. The children, particularly Owen, carried a quiet awareness of the fragility of their situation, a subtle watchfulness that Carter recognized as a form of post-traumatic vigilance. This manifested not as overt fear, but as an increased attentiveness to Carter's moods, a keen observation of his interactions with the outside world. Consider how, after the judge's final ruling, Owen would often pause at the threshold of the barn, his gaze lingering on Carter, seeking a silent reassurance before proceeding with his day. This wasn't a lack of trust, but a deeply ingrained habit of assessment, a testament to the intense period of uncertainty they had endured. Consequently, Carter found himself consciously projecting an aura of calm and stability, even when internal anxieties stirred. He learned to compartmentalize his own lingering doubts, presenting a steady presence that served as an anchor for the children. Furthermore, building on this newfound stability, the children's integration into the farm's routines evolved beyond mere participation to active contribution. Each child discovered their niche, their unique way of adding value to their collective existence. Sarah, who had once been withdrawn, found her voice through the small flock of chickens she was tasked with tending. Her meticulous care, her gentle cooing as she collected eggs, became a quiet testament to her growing confidence. Conversely, young Caleb, now fully recovered, discovered an unexpected aptitude for assisting Carter with the lighter tasks in the fields, his small frame surprisingly adept at carrying tools or weeding. This division of labor wasn't imposed, but emerged organically, each child gravitating towards activities that suited their burgeoning skills and interests. This fostered a sense of shared responsibility, transforming chores from obligations into contributions to their collective well-being. Another crucial layer to their reintegration involved the subtle but significant shift in their interactions with the wider community. While the initial legal battle had been a trial by fire, it had also served to solidify their place within the town's consciousness. Neighbors who had once viewed them with suspicion now offered tentative smiles, a nod of acknowledgement, or even small gestures of neighborly kindness. Martha, the schoolteacher, began visiting regularly, bringing books and engaging the children in educational games, bridging the gap between their isolated farm life and the broader social fabric of the community. She understood that true integration required more than just legal acceptance. It demanded social inclusion and the fostering of genuine relationships. Consequently, the children began to experience a sense of belonging that extended beyond the farm's boundaries, their hesitant interactions with townsfolk slowly blossoming into tentative friendships. Conversely, the experience had also instilled in Carter a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of seemingly disparate individuals. He recognized that his initial isolation had been a self-imposed barrier, a defense mechanism that had ultimately hindered his own healing. Now, he actively sought out opportunities for connection, understanding that his own well-being was inextricably linked to the well-being of his newfound family and their place within the community. This led him to participate more actively in town meetings, to offer assistance to neighbors in need, and to share the bounty of their farm, transforming his farm from a solitary refuge into a hub of quiet, communal engagement. He learned that true strength wasn't found in self-sufficiency, but in the willingness to rely on and contribute to a shared human experience. The wind still swept across the prairie, but now its song was no longer one of emptiness, but a melody woven with the quiet hum of a family finding its place in the world. Reflecting on this journey so far, we can perceive how the scattered fragments of a broken existence have begun to coalesce, not into a perfect mosaic, but into a tapestry rich with the hues of resilience and emergent belonging. The arid landscape of a solitary heart, once defined by the echoing silence of loss, has gradually been infused with the vibrant presence of new life, a testament to the enduring capacity for connection that resides within the human spirit. The tentative tendrils of trust, once fragile and easily threatened, have deepened, weaving themselves into the very fabric of daily life, transforming obligation into a shared purpose. This evolution is akin to watching a desert bloom after a long, parched season. The initial signs are subtle, almost imperceptible, yet they herald a profound transformation of the very earth. The echoes of past grief, though they may never entirely dissipate, have been recontextualized, their mournful resonance now overlaid with the melodic strains of present joy and shared responsibility. The weight of former failures, once a crushing burden, has been transmuted into a potent catalyst for present action, a quiet determination to honor the present by safeguarding the future. This shift is not about erasing the past, but about integrating its lessons, allowing them to inform and strengthen the path forward, much like ancient stones are repurposed to build a stronger foundation. The very definition of family, once narrowly construed by blood and tradition, has expanded, embracing the profound truth that bonds forged through shared experience and mutual devotion can be as enduring, if not more so, than those of lineage. As we pivot towards the final reflection, consider the cumulative effect of these interwoven threads. The initial vulnerability, the hesitant steps towards an uncertain future, have paved the way for a quiet strength, a profound understanding that true resilience is not the absence of fear, but the courage to act in its presence. The disparate individuals, once strangers brought together by circumstance, have discovered a shared rhythm, a collective heartbeat that pulses with the promise of enduring connection. This journey has illuminated the transformative power of opening oneself to the unexpected, of allowing vulnerability to become a bridge rather than a barrier. The narrative arc, moving from desolate solitude to a nascent sense of belonging, underscores a fundamental truth, that even in the most barren terrains, the seeds of hope, when nurtured with compassion and courage, can indeed blossom into a thriving, interconnected life. The implications of this convergence point towards a deeper understanding of what it truly means to build a life, to find one's place, and to offer that sanctuary to others. The wind, once a solitary mourner whistling through the skeletal remains of a life Carter Hale had known, now carried a different tune. It was no longer the sound of absence, but a chorus, a symphony of 6 young voices harmonizing with the rustle of leaves and the creak of the barn. The farm, that vast expanse of earth that had mirrored the barrenness of his soul, had transformed. It was no longer merely land, it was a crucible, a place where grief had been met, not with surrender, but with a fierce, unexpected blossoming. The desert within him, once an endless, trackless waste, had yielded to a quiet, persistent cultivation, watered by shared tears and the surprising resilience of the human spirit. The stark reality of his losses remained, etched into the lines of his face and the quiet moments of reflection, but they no longer defined the entirety of his existence. They were chapters, not the whole story, a somber prologue to a narrative now filled with the vibrant present. The profound realization that had struck Carter on that rain-soaked morning was not a sudden epiphany, but a slow, dawning understanding that had been nurtured through shared bread and whispered fears. It was the quiet revelation that mercy and charity, while noble in their own right, were but fleeting gestures compared to the enduring strength of kinship. His pursuit of those 6 lost children, initially driven by a flicker of humanitarian impulse, had evolved into an unyielding commitment to family. He had run not just after them, but towards a forgotten part of himself, a part that had been buried beneath layers of sorrow. His voice, once an echo in an empty house, had found its purpose not in solitary lament, but as a bridge, connecting him to others, to a community, and most importantly, to these children who had, in their own profound way, reclaimed him. The act of asking for help, once unthinkable for a man so accustomed to self-reliance and isolation, became the most powerful declaration of his newfound purpose. It was an admission of need, a testament to the fact that strength is often found not in independence, but in the courage to connect and to be connected. The quiet word, "Dad," spoken in the hushed intimacy of the barn, was more than an appellation. It was a balm, a profound act of healing that filled the cavernous spaces of his loss. It was a testament to the fact that true family is not always born of blood, but forged in the crucible of shared experience, mutual trust, and unwavering devotion. The children, in their innocent wisdom, had recognized the man beneath the grief, the father waiting to be reborn. They had, with their small hands and even smaller hearts, offered a gift of immeasurable value, the chance to belong, to nurture, to love again. The farm, once a symbol of his solitary endurance, was now a testament to collective resilience. The wind still swept across the open plains, but its song was no longer one of loneliness. It was a melody of shared life, of laughter that chased away the shadows, and of a future built not on the ashes of the past, but on the enduring foundation of a family found and fiercely loved. The true practice begins now, in the quiet understanding that the greatest strength is not in weathering the storm alone, but in building a sanctuary together, a testament to the enduring power of human connection.